thing I had is I want council to consider potentially making the data center use conditional in the I-2 district. And I bring this up because the way I understand zoning is that a permitted use is essentially, we look at this use, potential use that could come to a specific zone, and a permitted use is, that's perfect, we have no concerns, we think that's great. Put it there, yes, go ahead. And we don't have hardly any control over what happens beyond that. I'd like to make it a conditional use because that sets it back just a little bit and it says, hey, there's potential for concerns here. There's potential for some pain points, and we want to make sure that this developer is doing this properly. We want the public to have a chance to weigh in and voice their concerns. And that would go to the BZA, and we would be able to have that discussion at that point. And the flip side of that is we could say it's not allowed anywhere, and I don't think that's the right choice either. I think, you know, there's a lot of potential good that comes from this data center, and I would like to see what could happen from it. But I think from what I've heard from the people in this community, there are a lot of concerns, and we need to, I believe, take a moment to hear their voices and make sure they are heard, and allow ourselves a little bit of extra time to be sure we're meeting that need. So again, nothing, I don't think we need to take action on it tonight unless we want to, but I want to start some discussion.
Tonight, or do you want to talk later?
We could start the discussion tonight.
Can you clarify, you said you would like to see it, the language changed to conditional use?
Yes, right.
And it's, what did you say it is now?
It's a permitted use.
Permitted use, yeah.
So permitted use, as long as they meet the typical development requirements of that zone, then they are allowed to proceed with that development without any further input from the city. You can't stop them for anything. Conditional use allows us to set certain specific barriers and say, you need to meet these metrics, and if you don't meet these metrics, then you're not being a good neighbor, you're not being a good part of our community, and we're going to say, no, you can't put that there. But then, of course, they can always come back with a different revised development, a different revised data center that's less obtrusive, and then that would be approved by the BZA, hopefully.
And you would like to see this apply to all I-2 or specific areas, or is that even possible?
Just the data center use, which is currently only permitted in the I-2 district,
Yeah.
so, yeah, anywhere data center is permitted.
Which would be all I-2.
You're right.
So you would want this conditional use requirement to be for all I-2 then, is what you're saying?
Yes, right. Well, yeah.
Right.
And I'll state the other side, that I've spoken to Brent Stevens about this, and he is not in favor of it. He wants the developer to have as much leverage as possible to bring the end user in. And again, I understand that, but I think these are the sorts of reasonable protections we can put in place as doing our due diligence as the protectors of the city residents.
Whatever's my turn. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I want to, again, council needs to understand something, because I've been involved in economic development through a lot of projects, lots of meetings and tours, and I think the danger we get into, and the Board of Zoning Appeals does a fantastic job, but there are 5 volunteers in the community. And the way these things will play out, that issue gets taken to them. The room's full of people that are concerned about it, like we read on Facebook now. If those people all come to the meeting, the vote goes by if there's public outcry for it. So the Building of Zoning Appeals turns them down. Then the future development leaves, because they're not here to fight. They will flee a community that puts barriers in their way. And that's just a reality, you know, and some of those data center things that have been killed around the country have been because zoning wasn't in place, and they were forced to have hearings, and it all went bad, and votes went different, and whether you like them or not, I mean, they have to be something that can help us, but they leave and we've got nothing. So it's a danger you get into, because their only appeal to BZA is back to you guys, back to council. And you would have to vote, you know, you could vote overturn them, but it becomes a big black eye they all try to avoid. Just food for thought.
I mean, if BZA wanted to turn that decision over to us immediately, I would be more than happy for this council to weigh in on that instead. And I think that maybe as a board of volunteers, they're less inclined to buck the public
Sure they are.
feeling or the people in the room, but I would hope that we would provide a measured vote in this room if it came to that.
I'm just warning council that the heart of economic development is to remove all barriers so people are encouraged to come and it's easy for them, you know. and-
Well, and I think that's, see, I'm torn to both sides of it, because I agree with you that we want to make doing business in Van Wert as easy as possible. But yet, we also have a duty to protect our community from the bad players if we do give them free rein. So I see both sides of it. I'd have to do more research on conditional versus permitted and what all that means to be more educated on it, to form an opinion. But I'm all about free enterprise and you know, like I said, making things easy for businesses. But I also don't want to give them free rein. And so that's my concern, and that's why I'm torn between the two, because, you know, as the gentleman spoke earlier about the stone crushing thing, if we would have given them free rein, I would have personally not been happy. And so I'm glad they got stopped. So, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I get it. I get both sides, but I don't know.
I think the big picture is everybody's going data center, bad.
Yeah.
That's the whole picture of the whole community. That's everything I've heard, even at work. And I work out to the marsh. I think maybe before we go talking about zoning, your conditional, maybe we need to dig deeper into a data center on how because the big thing is water, everybody says water. I think we need to dig deeper and find out how they get their water, how they cool it, and how do they recycle it. A lot of it is thermal, they recycle their water.
Right.
They have their own reservoir. I just think it needs to be dug deeper before we go any further with that discussion, because it's all about the data center. It's about nothing else.
Yeah, and I agree with him. And I think, careful how I say this. I think if more information was communicated to the public about those facts, there would be less concern. Because I know the answer to some of those concerns, but the answers I know have not been communicated to the public. I don't think that it's a case of it being a secret, it just hasn't been done. And so, you know, I have a concern about the noise, potentially. I have a concern about what are they going to use as their electric backup. You know, I do have concerns myself. But I think also part of the problem is I don't think that the people in our, the people that represent the city of Van Wert even have those answers, because the end user hasn't been publicly announced yet. Because a lot of those questions won't be answered until they know who the end user is, because the end user is going to be the one that determines some of those questions,
Mhm.
or the answers to those questions. So I don't, yeah, is there something that we can do that's both of those things that you're suggesting, you know, holding businesses accountable, but also not opening up a can of worms?
Sure, yeah. I think that we could also, or maybe instead, do things like a noise ordinance, which we only have for vehicles right now, I believe. So we could implement an actual noise ordinance that would cover that. We could regulate better what types of power generation can be done out at the site. I think those specific types of legislation would be perfectly reasonable. And maybe that would be enough to do in place of making this a conditional use.
Yeah, I kind of would rather go that route personally.
Yeah.
You know, but I guess, so I'm thinking timeline here. Do we wait until they've got the plans in place, and then we do an ordinance that is nixing their plans?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that's why I just wish there was more communication
Well,
on those types of things.
I think it would be more dangerous to wait for them to have their plan. I don't know how everybody else feels. It feels to me like that puts us at more risk, that
Right.
we're saying, yeah, you have your plan, and we're going to say, no, you can't do that. We're going to put new legislation on the books to say you can't do that, instead of right now saying, this is our standard, and when your development comes in, you have to meet that standard.
But you also don't want to discriminate against different types of businesses. So you would have a noise ordinance for all I-2, for example.
Yeah,
Or you would have an ordinance of the amount of water they can consume out of whatever resource for all I-2,
Mhm.
right? Just as an example.
I don't know if you can discriminate based on the use.
Right, I personally would not like to see that, you know, well.
It'd be
this
better to be
business-
broad.
Yeah, right.
Well, as far as the water goes, I get a little sensitive about this, because I read some of this crap too, and people
Yeah.
act like we're just gonna give away 2 million gallons a
Right.
day. We were never gonna do that.
Right,
Never commit to that. I mean, the city's long-term water situation has always been first in my mind as we've talked to these people.
yep.
In fact, you're gonna be surprised when we finally talk about real numbers, but are you suggesting that you wanna do this in light of what's about to happen with what's on the books now?
The
Make a
upcoming
change?
data center, yeah.
Well, the attorney needs to weigh in on this, because I think we're beyond.
We're a little
that.
late
Yeah.
at that point for this project.
How so?
Well, because we have an end user now that committed based on the rules in place at the time.
Yeah, contracts are in place. I mean, you're gonna move the goalposts after the contract's signed. I don't think we can do
Wait,
that.
what contract? So this is the first I'm hearing about this.
Well, okay, the end user hasn't been announced, it doesn't mean a contract hasn't been signed. Now, I don't know whether or
No,
not it
yeah.
has, okay?
But there's a developer and an end user deep into closing.
Yeah.
My question is, why wasn't all this information given out to the public before now?
Thank you.
What information?
These contracts and
There's no,
stuff.
I don't know about a contract.
So-
I agree
Well,
with you guys.
first of all, those are contracts between private parties. They're
Yeah,
not,
well, they're not our business. We don't-
yeah, they're
We're
not
not party to it.
subject to public disclosure.
So
In fact-
why would those private contracts hold us responsible for their agreements? To me, they haven't approached the city to say, we need these things from you. We still have all the leverage in the world to say, this is our standard. I don't know why the private contracts would have any bearing on what especially if the public has no idea what these contracts are, what the agreements are, what the discussions have been.
But
I'm honestly a little bit
I
more
don't
worried
think
now
council
going
has-
into
I don't
this
think council
conversation.
has any say in what businesses come to Van Wert and what businesses don't come to Van Wert.
Yeah,
That's not what I'm
It's a
saying.
common courtesy for them to come here and say like, hey, we're going to bring our business in. Oh, great, thanks for coming in and letting us know, but I don't think as council, they have any,
That's not what I'm saying, no.
Okay.
We have duty, responsibility, and the ability to regulate our businesses. And that's what we use our zoning for. And I think we use our zoning to make sure that our people are protected.
don't think you can change the rules because they followed all the rules in place in all their due diligence about coming to Van Wert.
So I have a question. If we were to implement, for example, a noise ordinance for I-2, wouldn't all existing businesses in I-2 have to abide by that regardless of how long they've been here or not?
Not always, I mean, there's,
Yeah.
there's plenty of things that get grandfathered in because they were there before the zoning change.
Okay,
Now, that doesn't apply unanimously to every type of thing, but it applies regularly.
okay. So that clears that up a little bit. Dwayne, you were gonna say something?
No, not right now.
Okay. But I think what maybe, to piggyback off of Dwayne, going back to the point I made earlier, and Jay, you know, I've read some of that, and in fact, I don't follow that stuff anymore. It's too toxic, but, I would like for, either Dwayne to report back or for Brent to come to council in the near future and give more details to help alleviate some of the concerns that the community has.
I think a lot of those concerns can be talked to Brent more after that end users.
Well, I think some of it could be now, but yeah, I mean, there's gonna be some he's gonna say, we don't know until the end user has, you know, finalized everything, and that's fine. But I think there's some information, some of the big concerns that some of the community has, electric, water, all that stuff, could be answered now.
I have an idea, why couldn't media, we come up with a list of questions that the public wants to know about? Why couldn't the media do like an article, here's the question, here's the answer, question, answer, and publish that?
Yep.
So we all know,
Yep.
that's
And-
my idea.
Yeah, and he did, in Brent's defense, he did do that on the commissioner's show a few weeks or months ago. But yeah, I agree, I think having some sort, and I think that's probably a burden on the ED office, to get that out into the community about dispelling those myths.
But I think that's what we need to get done.
Yeah, I would agree. So,
It's gonna happen.
what's that?
There'll be full disclosure as soon as that time's appropriate.
Right, I think that's the reason he's saying that by the end of next month, that end user will be revealed, and then there's gonna be a community advantage. And that's where all these questions.
Okay.
I believe he said AEP is gonna be there.
Okay,
So, but we don't know the date yet.
okay. Good.
So is that the end of February or
End of March. End of March.
Okay. And then that'll be announced like through the paper and things like that, so all of the public can?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
I've got to say, I feel more concerned right now having our administration say that it's too late to change anything already. I'm more concerned now than I was going into this. I felt that we had more opportunity to discuss. I don't know when the public committed to anything regarding this data center, aside from the rezoning and the annexation, but those are not development commitments, as far as I'm aware. That's
What you're
concerning.
suggesting is we've lured Honda to town, and tonight at council, we decide you can make cars, but they can't have tires. I mean, you can't, they invest a lot of money in, I'm not defending them, but I guess I'm defending our process. And I think people like Brent and even myself sometimes need a little more, again, we're not giving the city away. We're not putting something here that's gonna jeopardize the lives of the community of Van Wert. But it's gotten popular to hate data centers across the country.
I get it.
You know, and it's become almost trendy. And people don't always know, they think they know, but electric's one thing, and we're gonna deal with rates, and like, as I said before, we're gonna deal with rates whether they are here or go somewhere else to build, that's gonna affect us. So,
Well, Jay, I have faith in what you and Brent have done with the data center and obviously doing all the research with our resources and everything. But that's because I asked the questions, right? And I got that information because I asked. Not you, I talked to Brent.
yeah,
But he can't spend an hour with every person who has a question on it. And that's my point, is that I believe everything is gonna be fine with it. Or I think we're gonna be okay when they come here, based on what I know. But I don't think the average citizen in Van Wert feels that way.
I know, but there's some overwhelming feeling in the community that this should be on the ballot. And, you know, we wouldn't have voted on Samsung, we wouldn't have voted on Honda, and now we're gonna have a vote for a data. I just don't know if that's how it can work, or should work.
And I don't think that's what people are asking for, personally. I just think that they wanted more transparency on how it was gonna work. Because, I mean, they had concerns, you know all the concerns. But it's just, no one's been,
Just kind of kept in the dark.
yeah,
A lot
we've
of
been
people
very
feel
kept in the
like
dark.
they've just been.
Yeah, well, we know a lot more today than we knew a month ago. Because we met with them a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, you guys.
Yeah.
But,
But yet they say, we will tell all this stuff when the time's appropriate. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, they're gonna be transparent about exactly what they're doing, but I guess, trust us, I don't think it's gonna be that bad.
Well, people just, I keep hearing that we should know more, and that the concerns for water, their water bill's gonna go up, the electric bill's gonna go up, their wells are gonna run dry, you know.
They're not gonna
things
use groundwater. I'll just spell that right now. They're not
Okay.
gonna use
like- So,
groundwater.
there we go.
No one's well's going dry.
Okay, but that's just, you know, people are living in fear of what if, the unknown.
Dwayne, would it be too much of an ask for you to go back to Brent and ask if he can get with the Independent Times Bulletin?
I'll do that, yeah.
And just dispel some of these myths now, that, as much as he can? Because I feel like waiting until the end of March is too long.
Yeah. And if he could come to council, you know.
Maybe you can do both, you know.
Yeah, why not?
Right, yeah.
It exists an executive session issue, economic development.
Does it qualify?
I'm
No, that's,
I don't know if it does.
not sure either.
yeah, I need to,
That's all I have to say.
It
so we
does
can
if you
move on.
discuss it in terms
Have
of
to have
keeping
executive
a
session.
secret of who we're talking about. But that's,
that portion would, but, yeah.
yeah.
I have.
It's no secret.
So,
It's economic development office.
Maybe our law director can remind us, was it last summer was the last time we touched an ordinance that pertained to this, as far as the zoning? And there were several here that made
Does-
recommendations, and I think Hall, maybe you were one of them.
That would have been, well, I think we touched on the zoning probably late summer, in the fall, early fall, like
Yeah,
maybe August into September.
yeah.
And, because the property in question was annexed back in, what, the end of June? And then we touched upon that zoning question. I want to say the beginning of September, but I could be off a meeting
The
one direction or the
generation
other.
question.
Yes,
That was December.
Was that December?
That was passed. I was at that meeting. November, December, pretty sure.
okay. Well, it might have been brought up the first time then in September, but yeah. Because we went through all that then. And how much that affected the transaction itself, I don't know. I'm not part of any of that, so.
Is that your only question then?
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the timing was, and, you know, if we need to circle back on that ordinance, just to remind ourselves how it reads.
But we made some
Because
change.
I thought we made changes to it.
We did. We did.
You got it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we allowed electrical generation in I-2
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
for
Yeah.
private.
Yes, and we made a couple of changes while that was, because that went 3 readings,
Yes.
which is probably why I think it started in September and it got into November before
That
it
was
finished.
probably it.
And we made a couple of changes during that process, if I remember correctly. I need to go back and look at that and remind myself exactly how that went down. But I know it went 3 readings, so. That's because there was a lot of discussion with the language from the beginning to the end. And I remember talking to several people during that whole process as well, so.
All right, did you have anything else to report? I know there was a request for an ordinance that might fall under your bailiwick for the 50-year.
Yes, right. I'll just finish by saying, I think if we're running out of time and the people feel like they haven't been heard, which I know that sentiment is out there, I know that there's a ton of stuff on Facebook that's just false, and we need to dispel that. I think a very public hearing would be a great opportunity to dispel a lot of that. And Jay, just so you know, I have a lot of trust in you and Brent in what you're doing. There are a lot of people who are saying a lot of bad things about you. I'm sure you know that, and I can't stand it when they do. But
Pertaining to data centers?
well, that and many other things, you know. But I think I would like to ask, make a motion for the law director to prepare emergency legislation for data center to be a conditional use in the I-2 district.
We have a motion. No one's willing to second at this point. Definitely keep it on the radar.
We'll move it along then. What is the second piece of legislation?
50-year
The
lease.
50-year lease for AEP?
Yes, so I'd make a motion to request the law director to prepare legislation to approve the 50-year franchise lease for AEP.
Second.
Mr. Block?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mrs. Ringwald?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Hurlis?
Yes.
All right, is that it for streets and alleys?
That's enough.
All right. All right, then we will move on to properties and equipment with Mr. Egler being absent. Ms. Ringwald, I don't know if I put you on the spot. Do you have
I
anything?
did not receive a report
Okay.
from Mr. Egler, so properties and equipment has no report.
All right, any questions from anyone? Ms. Ringwald? All right, next is Parks and Recreation, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report tonight.
Any questions from council for Mr. Roberts? Next is Health, Service, and Safety, Ms. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
All right, any questions from council for Ms. Moore? All right, and then finally, Judiciary and Annexation, Mr. Hurlis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have one thing that I would like to bring the council's attention to, and also maybe a question for Mr. Fleming, since Mr. Mark Wert is not here this evening. Apparently, the city owns a parcel of land 3 miles north of town. That's 38 acres of farm ground. Well, 5 acres is woods. And my understanding is that this parcel was gifted to the city of Van Wert by a gentleman, not sure when or who, with wishes of it being a bird sanctuary. And Mr. Mark Wert was not sure of the details of that. And I'm not sure how we can look up those details, because I'm curious if there's any restrictions on the ownership of that land, if we have the ability to sell it or not. So is that something Mr. Hatcher would have to look into, or Mr. Fleming?
In the past, we've been through this before, we didn't find anything.
It would be, if for it to be a, typically, if there's a restriction that runs with the deed, it has to be in the deed itself for it to, because, you know, the purchasers going forward have to be on notice of that restriction.
Right.
For it to, I think the legal term is called run with the land. I mean, I go back and look at the deed where the person deeded it to the city and see what restrictions they placed on it. And whatever restrictions were in that deed, we're bound by it. But,
Right.
if there's nothing there, then regardless of what they discussed, I think that, I don't think the restriction would run with the land, even if there was a discussion beforehand. Typically speaking, that's how that works.
So is that something you could look into to see if we have the ability to sell it if we so desired?
I can take a look at the deed and see what sort of restrictions are on that. Okay?
Thank you.